Well, all right. Well, welcome back for another episode of Relationship Wednesday. Again, relationship management. Again, we're talking about generational systems, and again, we just really want to talk and think through and think about what's driving our relationship choices. Like that's what I'm after. What we're talking about. What's driving our relationship choices? What belief systems am I carrying that allows me to see the same scenery? If you ever watched the movie Groundhog Day, where I feel like we're in Groundhog Day when it comes to our relationships or in whatever life, where we can't seem to break the cycle. And so where we got to sometimes go back to where some of these beliefs that we created, we may not even be aware of. And again, I know it may sound like this and that, but God is a thinking God. Like He's about dealing with our root systems. It's not just for therapists or these people out there. God also cares about how we think. The Bible says, "A man thinketh in his heart, so is he," meaning that God cares about our thought life and what we believe. Whatever Philippians says, whatever man, whatever lovely, just, pure, praiseworthy, think on these things. So God cares about what we're thinking about, what we're believing, and all those type of things. And a lot of times, we've given our belief systems and our thinking over to them. Sometimes just by happenstance of just growing up in environments we just didn't know, and they're driving our Groundhog Day experiences of our relationships and of our situations and stuff. So I wanted to share this with you all real quick about how environments, experiences, and all those things, they sometimes can create cycles and they drive things in so many different ways. It can be financially, it can be emotionally, it can be relationally, it can be career-wise, it can be off, like everything works. You just plug in a different thing, but the foundational principle works for every single thing, meaning that seeds produce cycles. So when you plant an apple seed, let's plant one apple seed. You plant it in the ground. What's inside of that apple? More seeds.
Yeah.
So the seeds produce the cycles. So once a seed is sown, a lot of times it grows in every generation, because until that seed cycle is broken,
that's tough,
and we plant a new seed, we can't create a new cycle. And so what happened was, here was the seed that was sown for me. Now,
you gotta dig up the tree then.
Yeah, pretty much the belief system, which is the tree.
That's the unlearning, get the roots out. Ooh.
Yeah, and that's the hardest thing. That's the reason why so few people do it, because it's a tough process. It's not easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it.
Yeah,
you know. So that's the reason why we see so few people actually engage or up to a certain level, because these are like tough things. Anyway, so what happened was, my parents. A lot of times, what happens when you go into ministry and stuff, and you believe in God, I grew up in a house where they tried to not let us feel it, but they grew up in a house where they had to believe God for everything. We grew up in a scarcity environment where the food was hard to come by, figure out how to pay the rent, all those type of things. So I grew up in a house where my parents are figuring out how to, stay above water.
Yeah.
So one year, I got like $80 for my birthday, 80 something though. So what happened was, my mother said, you need to start saving. I'm like, great. So you can always have money. Awesome. So I gave my money to my mother. So I wanted this heat mentor I wanted to buy. So then what happened was, I went to, and it was only $5. I'm like, okay, I got like 80 something bucks, $5. What's that? You know what I'm saying?
Swagging.
So I go, I ask my mom, I said, yeah, remember that money I gave you for my birthday? Yeah, I need $5 of it so I can buy this He-Man toy. We spent it. Huh? We spent it. So, okay, that's fine. We'll just give me the $5 of what you and I can go get my He-Man toy. So I get the other back later. Yeah. We don't have that. We got to take. Oh, okay. See, now.
I can't save nothing.
Right. There you go, right? So now it created this thing where I became a spender from that experience. So basically saying is that, well, before somebody else take my money, I'm going to go ahead and let it go.
Tough, yeah.
So now a lot of times we get on people's behavior, the fruit, not realizing it came from a place where, as a kid, not understanding.
Yeah.
And where they were trying to figure out how to live life. But I don't understand that. All I know is so I'm saying how I processed it. I'm not saying my parents were bad and trying to do something wrong. It's just that the way I undertook it. So now I'm living in this scarcity thing of the fear of, okay, well, if I do, then somebody else gonna take it, whether it be this, so I'm gonna go ahead and just buy what I want and spend it on, and think about tomorrow later. And then like, man, you never could keep money, but not realizing that it started from a seed that was planted, a belief from an experience when I was a child.
Right.
Other people, they become savers. In other words, they hold on to everything. Like, where they felt the pain of not having. So I hold on to everything. Nobody ain't getting nothing. You know what I'm saying? I hold on, you know what I'm saying? And like, man, that's fine. That's why you never have it. I always got and again, both are not good because they both coming from a place of bad experiences.
Yeah.
Instead of, because, real giving comes from a flows like a river. Like the Dead Sea, you know why the Dead Sea is dead? Because there's no flowing river like this. It has to inflow or outflow. And so to be a healthy receiver and a healthy person always have the right way, you got to understand your money's supposed to be like a river, meaning that money comes in, money goes out, more money comes in. It's supposed to be a flow of a system. But that's why a lot of times we're kind of stuck in our life because those experiences who created these beliefs. So in other words, it's not the behavior that we're really working on. Like, you need to give, that's fine, I hear you, but my experiences that I believe is driving the way I'm going about what I'm doing.
Right.
So, and I'm gonna to finish off with that story though, I'm gonna tell you what I did. So to make matters worse, I said, y'all took my money, I'm taking your money. So I went in my mother pocketbook and I took $5. And I'm like, well, after all,
how old was you?
I had to be like 9, 10 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I'm like, yeah. So then my mother was like, so did you take the $5 up? And I'm thinking in my mind, I'm like, y'all took. You're right. Did I really take your $5? So I got on punishment.
Hey, that's hilarious.
For taking the money. Yeah, right. And so, they said, we ain't buying you no more. I said, okay. I said, see, and what I'm saying is, all these experiences creating beliefs as a child, like they're building blocks.
That's funny.
And now it's driving the way I'm thinking about money as I get older. So then we come to church and you're hearing, oh yeah, God's gonna bless you. You need to be a giver and all that. That's fine. I hear you. Mm-hmm. But my experiences and what I've learned and the cycles that I've been operating under came from that.
So how does that person break that cycle?
So and that's what I want to talk about in the last session. Okay. But we'll talk about it. But to answer your question and get it going, is that forgiveness is the seed that changes the cycle. Right. Without forgiveness, there can be, and the thing is, I wasn't even mad at them, but the forgiveness was that I had to basically give an understanding and pretty much let them off the hook for that incident to be able to create a new belief system.
A little bit of grace.
Yeah, because a lot of times, as long as I was holding them in that experience captive, it was like holding that belief system intact.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah. But anyway, that's one point I'm making, and I use that experience because something could have happened relationally to you, or where the enemy does a great job at doing this to people, where he finds ways to try to tear down our identity as kids and make us never feel like we're good enough. Then we go into life, instead of getting jobs for the right reason or relationships for the right reasons, we get good relationships sometimes for the wrong reasons, all because I'm looking for validation.
You know, it's crazy. And I don't know if this is extreme, but I don't care. If anybody, because my daughter, she's like, she's cool. Like, she do what she want. If she don't want to talk to you, she not going to talk to you. My son, he's a little different. But anytime she's in her mood where she ain't trying to talk, I'm like, she just don't want to talk. And people are like, oh, you shy? Don't be shy. I'll be like, she's not shy. Because, like I said, she's taking in everything. So if I allow them to say she's shy, then she's going to start agreeing to that identity of being shy, and now she's living out what somebody else put on her. So anytime anybody says anything about my children that doesn't align with what I tell them, I politely step in and be like, no, she's not shy. She just don't know you. or she's just working through what she's working through.
And that's good. And that's
she's hearing me. Like, she's shearing them, and then now because she's not in a space to take up for herself yet. So she's only agreeing or taking in whatever somebody is saying. Because even people like, don't do this, you might hurt yourself. And she'll be climbing on something. Dad, help me, because if I fall, I might hurt myself. Like, where did you get that from? Like, no, go, and you won't fall. If you believe that, you won't fall. And then will be going through it, and she'll keep saying it, and I'll be correcting what she's saying. And eventually I did it. Yes, why? Because you believe. I believe, right? So these are things that if we allow the world to tell our children what they are, because they're learning, they just got here, right? They just trying to learn and figure this thing out, then they'll start accepting these identities that people are giving them. So for me, like even the doctor, and I let it slide the other day because it was in all fun, and sometimes Alicia, she was like, you don't have to every time. I do. But the lady was like, oh, are you being shy? And I was just like, I was about to go in, but I was gonna let her slide because I ain't seen her in a year, and we was having a good, experience. But it's just like, don't put that on her just because she's not responding the way you want her to respond. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and that's good. So I would say this, and I wanted to get into this like me. I'm always going to use scripture to validate everything we're saying, because I don't care about my opinion. I only care about the biblical and the Word of God's opinion, and giving God's understanding on it versus me giving because I feel like that's just my philosophy. But back to your point, though, that's one thing we do have to be careful of is labels, right? Yeah. So in a sense, through that experience that I just shared, is that in an unspoken way, I kind of labeled myself a victim to, not understanding what was going on. Yeah. And what happens is that we will always live out the label we embrace. Yeah. Because the way it always works is that if I label myself a victim, we may not say that, but sometimes we have the philosophies and the thinking about it. You may not even realize that, wow, I label myself a victim, so therefore I got to play out that character. I have to adopt the beliefs. I have to have the conversations about it. I have to, And so what happens is when you label yourself a winner, you're going to process life differently versus labeling yourself as a victim. Sure. Like people that. Two different people go through the same type of event, but one labeled themselves a winner, one labeled themselves a victim to it. And you have two totally different attitude and belief systems that were created out of it, all because of the label that they adopted, back to your point. Yep. So I want to use this Genesis chapter 12. This is what God told Abram. He said, I want to break a cycle and I want to do a new thing in your life. He said, let me tell you, he said, we got to get away from 3 type of labels. And so I can give you a new label that's going to change you for a whole new generation. He said, first you got to get out of your country because your country is labeling you. He said, your father's house.
That's environment, right? The country.
Yeah, no country. He said, you got to let me see. Country, family, and father's house. Country in the Hebrew represents ethnicity. Okay. Ooh. Ethnos. That's the reason why if you want to embrace the kingdom, you got to leave black culture. Crazy. So either you're going to be black or you're going to be kingdom. Yeah. One of the two. You can be kingdom inside of a black person's earth suit, but you can't adopt black culture and be kingdom. You have to be one or the other. That's gonna hurt. So in other words, right. So you got to know your label. So whatever label you adopt, that's going to become your belief system and your attitudes and the way you talk and the way you think. Crazy. So he said, you're going to have to remember the Jews are the only people that were created out of a covenant. Okay. So in other words, the Jews didn't exist like Africans or Asians or, Caucasians, not like that. These are people who are Middle Eastern people. And he says, I'm going to bring you out of that, and I'm going to call y'all Jews by covenant. I'm going to give you a new label. So in other words, he said, you're going to be my people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, chosen generation. Yeah. Which means that you got to divorce your other labels. That's why you can't serve 2 masters. You can't label yourself as a black man in America and be a kingdom citizen at the same time. Crazy. You got to, she said, so country means ethnos, meaning ethnicity. Okay. So you got to divorce your black culture in the philosophies of that if you're going to embrace this new label. Gotcha. Family is classification. the side of the street you grew up in. In other words, my family always made this amount, we all gonna make this amount. You know, our family always did this, we all, meaning my environment said this is all I can do with my life. That's, in other words, this became my label.
Yeah.
And he said, you got to break that. So you got to divorce that. This is what God did. He said, you got to break these 3 labels if you're going to embrace this new label to a land, a new belief system, to all the families of the earth. I'm trying to create a new seed cycle.
Yeah.
But these are the 3 areas you got to divorce.
The root.
These labels that is still controlling. And a lot of times we try to embrace the new land without divorcing the old labels. We're trying to bring the old labels and tack it on top of.
Right.
So you can't take your victimhood into your new relationship. You can't take what happened to you into your new situation. As long as I'm labeling I'm a divorcee trying to make a new marriage work, you can't. That label will always spoil the new situation.
Yeah.
In other words, I'm a victim. Everybody gonna take I can't, if I'm gonna be a great giver, I can't see myself as a victim. People always trying to take advantage.
Yeah.
I got to see myself as always a great investor. If I'm going to, it's these labels that really drive these things. And then the last one was father's house, meaning that whatever was in my bloodline ain't me. In other words, y'all may have dealt with that, but y'all are not my label. You know what I'm saying? So basically, my family had anger issues. Look, I'm saying that is not my label. You know what I'm saying? I have a whole new identity there, and that's what I'm saying. So what happens is that whatever label we attach ourselves to, will a lot of times will fortify our belief systems, because you have to realize that every character. Let's look at when you talk to actors or actresses, they'll always talk about once they find out about a character they got to play, they got to understand the mindset, the attitude, the conversation, the body language. But they got to know the character. So in other words, once you know what character and who you really are, what happens? I got to adopt the belief systems, the conversations, the philosophies, and all those things to become and do something totally different. So, so that was a good point, what you're saying, and what you're telling your daughter, I'm sure you probably even more intentional now.
Yeah.
Is that, in other words, like, that's why I like Jaden. Jaden used to tell people, people say, Jay, man, he said, he was so young. He said, I'm not Jay, man, I'm Jaden. In other words, you ain't going to, and so.
My daughter do the same thing. She'd be like, Hazy, I'm not Hazy, I'm Hayes. Or my mom calls her middle name, Miley, because my mother child always do the nickname thing. And she'd be like, Miley, she's like, can you stop calling me that? She's like, my name is Hayes. I'm like, all right, there you go, boo. So I'm with you. So the Heath Ledger thing, right? Remember he did the Joker.
Oh yeah.
And he really got into character, so much so that he couldn't get out. You know what I'm saying? And then ain't that how he lost his life?
Yeah, they said it took a toll on mental, that's what they said from a distance. I mean, of course, we never know all the facts, but from what they reported, that was sort of like the understanding.
So here's the thing: it's the craziest thing, because it's like it was his imagination that created the character in which he believed he was, and that goes back to whatsoever man thinketh in his heart. So he believed it enough to say, "This is who I am now," right? And it's like, once it's in there, it's in there. And the root, like, if you don't dig it back up and be like, oh no, I'm Heath, right? It just takes over. And I feel like that's the same thing when it comes to who we are or who we were taught to be in life, right? This is who I am. A lot of people always say, nah, this is just me. I ain't gonna never change. I'm like, damn, I feel sorry for you. You know what I'm saying? You ain't gonna never change. The whole goal is to evolve. So if you're not evolving, you're dying anyway. So if you're never gonna change, then you're never gonna be everything God calls you to be. Because there's so much more in there that we're unwilling to tap into for the sake of being who I've always been. You know what I'm saying? Or not being judged for stepping outside of who I am or who I was to become something different or something greater. And I think I think it's our community as well. Like, I don't really see, and I don't know all the other races, but I don't really see people having problems like, yo, if I want something different, I'm going to become something different. But ours is like, nah, bro, you know what I'm saying? I ain't never going to change. Ain't never going to get nothing different either. You know what I'm saying?
And so, but back to your point, I really feel like, just to make sure we don't lose this, because I feel like you brought up a good point today.
Yeah.
Meaning that Step number one, I'm not like big or I got steps in that way, but step or principle number one, if you want to put it like that and summing it up, like listen, if you really want to break the cycle, you first got to break the label.
Yeah, that's tough, man.
If you break the label, you're at a good starting point in breaking the cycle. A lot of times we try to break cycles before we break the label.
Yeah.
Like women. I know it's kind of hard, and hit me out on this. What did they put out there for women? Like they have songs. Say, I'm a slut, I'm a bitch, I'm this. Why? If I label this, my attitudes, my behavior is going to support that.
Sure.
Tupac, I'm a thug. I'm this, I'm that. What happens? And cause I was around during the Tupac days, as far as like listening to his music. And I remember talking about an interview. He said, me and our community, he said, in the way the world view, he said, I came with this character called a thug. And he said, this is our belief system. This is how we operate. This is the character of a thug. This is the way we operate. So he gave it a character. And because he had such a big influence on the African-American community and certain other subcultures, to the point where, because we respect his music so much, we adopted that.
Yeah.
And we let that become our label.
Yeah.
So now because I adopted it, now I gave my lifestyle an identity, and now it created a belief system, and it created a cycle by how now this is how my life is going to be. So what I'm saying is step number one, like if principle number one, listen, if you want to start breaking cycles, you gotta break the labels.
Yeah.
So that's why we always say little basic things like this: where you are is not who you are. And once you realize where you are is not who you are, I'm trying to tell you, you're on the first step to coming out, because, and we'll talk about it next week. I guess we'll pick back up on this next week. But I just say again, God bless you. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you here next Wednesday.
On the mic with Mike.
Thank you for joining Pastor Wayne Powell Sr. for this edition of Relationship Wednesday. We hope you enjoyed this episode of After I Did. Let's keep the conversation going by leaving your questions and comments in the chat. We also invite you to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And don't forget to click the notification bell so you are reminded to join us next Wednesday as Pastor Wayne continues this discussion of After I Did.